After an enormous heat wave, the oxygen levels on Earth have dropped so low that people can only survive on its synthetic form. Unfortunately, humanity is also faced with the biophysical rejection of synthetic oxygen, a deadly affliction called the sickness. Although it seems like there's no hope for humanity, Chronocor, the leading distributor of breathable air, continues to be committed to finding a solution to the oxygen crisis. In the year 2067, utility workers Ethan White and Jude Mathers work in the utility tunnel, rerouting power. When one worker tells the boss that he can't show up to his shift the next day, Ethan volunteers to take that shift. His boss grants it but lays off the other worker. Outside, the worker confronts Ethan, saying he needs his job as his kids have the sickness too. Ethan tells him that they all need money and Jude backs him up. They are interrupted by a protester who lights himself on fire. The protester claims that they have to sacrifice for future generations and that oxygen is not a privilege. Upon arriving home, Ethan sees the protester's self-exit reported in the news, saying it marks the anniversary of the death of the last living plant in captivity. He gives his wife, Xantha, who is afflicted with the sickness, a new mask that is compatible with the high-grade oxygen, and she personalizes the mask by painting flowers on it. Shortly after, she vomits blood, but assures Ethan that she's okay. The next day, Jude accompanies Ethan to the Applied Sciences Division of Chronocor as Ethan is summoned by Chronocor's particle research CTO, Regina Jackson. Predicting that the oxygen rejection epidemic will eventually wipe out humanity in a couple of years, Regina reveals to Ethan that he could save them all. She brings the pair to their laboratory and shows them the Chronicle, a prototype time machine that Richard White, Ethan's late father and Chronicle Project's lead physicist, had worked on before his death 20 years prior. Billy Mitchell, one of the scientists, introduces himself to Ethan and sees a device on his wrist. Regina informs Ethan that during a test of the Chronicle, the radio waves they sent bounced back with a message from 407 years into the future, saying, "Send Ethan White." Thinking that the people who sent the message might have found the cure for the oxygen sickness, they ask Ethan to cooperate, although there is a chance it may not work. While Ethan strongly resists the idea of abandoning Xantha, Jude advises him to do it, as saving the world means saving Xantha. On Ethan's 8th birthday, his dad gave him a box that contained a gift and told him that he believes it will help him become who he is meant to be. Immediately after, Ethan inserted his hand into the box, a device with a red light attached itself to his wrist, causing him to bleed. As he watched his son cry, Richard told him that it wouldn't come off and walked away. Later that night, following Richard's instructions, Ethan and his mother Celine went for a walk in the middle of the night. Unexpectedly, a group of people with guns surrounded them and shot Celine. Her mask was removed and Ethan gave her his own, but Celine refused to accept it, knowing if she did, her son would also die. After Celine suffocated to death, one of the men removed Ethan's mask as he desperately called for his dad and slowly ran out of oxygen. Fortunately, Jude arrived and was able to rescue him. Acknowledging Ethan's fear, Xantha tells him that she believes he'll accomplish what he needs to and that he'll come back to her. After much thought, Ethan decides to go through with the plan and promises Xantha that he'll return. Ethan informs Regina of his decision, with the condition that regardless of the amount of doses he'll be able to get, Xantha will get the first one, to which Regina agrees. Regina and Billy inform Ethan that the Chronicle can't tether to itself in the future and that he could end up inside of a mountain or ocean. Regina reminds him that his mission is to track the people who sent the message and bring the cure back. Billy gives him Archie, a device for systems analysis, navigation, and communication, which will also send his vitals back to the scientists, letting them know whether he's safe or not. Jude bids him farewell and promises to look after Xantha until he gets back. They send a frightened Ethan, also known as Chronicle Subject 14, as close as they can to the source of the radio waves. After surviving the traumatic time travel, Ethan crashes into a rainforest and wakes up to his spacesuit burning. Soon after he removes his spacesuit, it explodes. After taking time to admire the lush rainforest, Ethan consults Archie about where he is, but it fails to link to a satellite, causing his location to remain unknown. After detecting a structure through geography magnets, Archie leads Ethan to the door of a bunker-like structure where he finds a skeleton with a bullet hole in its skull. To his horror, the skeleton's jumpsuit has his name on it, and beside it is a soil-covered Archie. Around the skeleton's wrist is a device like his, but unlike his, its light is green. Ethan activates the skeleton's device, and upon playing the last recording, he hears two males struggling before the sound of a gunshot. Synchronizing the star formations, Archie informs Ethan that they're in 2474 AD. Ethan then unknowingly eats poisonous gallberries, causing him to get incredibly sick. Fortunately, Jude appears and injects him with an antitoxin. The next day, Jude informs Ethan that they saw him die from poison and that he time-traveled to save him. Ethan decides to show the skeleton to Jude, who, in return, tries to calm Ethan down by assuring him that the skeleton is not him. Ethan and Jude follow Archie's directions to another door, which is opened by scanning Ethan's eyes. Navigating the bunker's pitch-dark interior, they find a screen that tells them to press the Enter key to activate, and although clueless about what it's for, Ethan follows. His wrist device pierces him, causing him to bleed, as its light turns from red to green. As it turns out, his wrist device is a DNA analyzer specifically made to grant him access to the Chronicle, which will automatically reactivate in 4 hours. As they are in the same Chronicle laboratory, Jude hopes that they can use it to go back to their own year. Ethan, however, is horrified upon realizing that it's possible he is the skeleton. Accessing the Chronicle logs, they see a holographic recording of Richard, who says that they have buried an atmospheric monitoring station which is meant to send data back to the Chronicle until the air becomes breathable. Log 97 shows the day that the Chronicle was first activated. The team sent its first subject, a radio wave packet that will ping the Chronicle in the future. To their horror, they received a message that said, "Send Ethan White." Since the machine worked, Regina suggested testing it, but Billy informed them that they couldn't as there was a problem with the power source of the 2474 Chronicle. The Chronicle's activation triggers a malfunction, warning them of a nuclear core power failure. The power feed needs to be reconnected before the countdown reaches 0. Otherwise, the charged particles will create a nuclear explosion. Archie tells them that the portal will not tether to 2067 as there's not enough power. With 3 hours and 50 minutes until the nuclear explosion, Ethan and Jude make their way to the nuclear core control room to fix it. When they find the ruins of their city full of skeletons, Ethan concludes that they failed to find a cure against the sickness. Ethan finds Xantha's classroom and discovers her skeleton, causing him to cry. As Jude comforts him, he says, "Maybe it's better this way. No one's suffering anymore," which Ethan recognizes as similar to what one of the men in the soil-covered Archie's recording said moments before a gunshot is heard. Ethan plays the recording, and a bewildered Jude pulls a gun on him, angry that he hid the device from him. Jude refuses to believe that he's the man in the recording and says that he brought a gun for protection. Claiming that he's saving Ethan from himself, Jude directs Ethan to the control room so they can reroute the power and continue their mission. Failing to do so, Ethan decides to pull the backup breaker while the room is depressurized. Because of this, the power gets restored and the nuclear core becomes active. Jude runs to an unconscious Ethan and wakes him up, and they return to the Chronicle laboratory, 37 minutes before the portal launch. At the Chronicle laboratory, Ethan discovers another door, and upon entering it, he learns that it's the first door he found next to the skeleton. He suffers a nervous breakdown and taunts Jude to kill him, but Jude denies and maintains that he is instead there to protect him. After locking Jude in a room, Ethan plays one of Richard's logs where he tearfully left a message for his 8-year-old son. In the message, Richard called home and told Celine to take Ethan and meet him where he first met her. When Regina entered the laboratory with a young Jude, Richard quickly ended the call. Richard confronted Regina for intending to use the Chronicle to flee to the future with her chosen few, and unsuccessfully tried to change her mind. Billy arrived and informed Richard that he ran the numbers and that he was sure it could work. He also claimed that the design team was working on a rough outline as they speak. Confused, Richard asked what the outline was for, and Billy realized that Richard did not authorize it. When Regina asked Billy if it was going to work, Billy confirmed that the Chronicle could be rigged to send a person one way like a slingshot. Addressing Richard's concern of it killing the subject, Billy assured him that a protective suit could keep the subject safe. He added that all they'd need is someone to fix the future's portal so that the subjects could have a safe passage when it links. Strongly opposing the plan, Richard revealed that he had locked the system so only Ethan's DNA could activate the Chronicle at the other end. Regina pulled a gun on Billy, who confirmed under duress that he could make it work, and eliminated Richard. Ethan, who thought his father abandoned him by taking his own life, weeps upon learning the truth. Jude breaks out of the room he's locked in, and together with Ethan sees Regina appointing his younger self to be Ethan's guardian, commanding him to make sure that Ethan stays alive as he's the key to everything. Devastated, Ethan angrily calls out Jude for using him. Jude tearfully tells him that he was young then too, and like him, was also used. When Jude tells Ethan that he is his family and that he did it for him, Ethan responds that he did it for himself. While Ethan tries to shut the Chronicle down, Jude stops him and taunts him to fight him, but Ethan refuses. Guilt-ridden, Jude ends his own life. In 2067, a handful of people are already lining up, waiting for the 2474 portal to open and link with their portal. Considering Ethan as a liability, Regina commands her men to shoot him as soon as he returns. Unfortunately for Regina, instead of linking the portal, Ethan sends the message, "Send Ethan White." Hundreds of extinct plants, a copy of Richard's recorded murder on Archie, and his farewell gift to Xantha to their portal. He then proceeds to destroy the Chronicle. Everything Ethan sent appears at the 2067 portal, and when the countdown reaches 0, the 2067 portal shuts down. At home, Xantha watches the news report of Chronocore headquarters raid, as well as Regina's arrest and the seizure of the extinct plants which will be used to revitalize the planet. A woman delivers Ethan's farewell gift to her, which is a beautiful flower, and she weeps, knowing she won't see him again. In 2474, Ethan buries Jude. With the timeline changed, he discovers that his skeleton has disappeared and that the ruined city has become a thriving inhabited one, with advanced architecture surrounded by lush greenery. And that's the end.